Are you ready to take your business to the next level? Discover new strategies and tactics as Susan Solovic introduced today's top business leaders and entrepreneurs to reveal their stories and insights. Now, the host of the 1% Edge, the small business expert, Susan Solovic.
Hello, and thanks for joining me. I'm Susan Solovic, and you're listening to the 1% Edge podcast. You know, there have been many advances in the way we conduct business these days. There's so much information readily available via the internet, and that helps keep you well informed. You can do business around the globe, basically from your garage or spare bedroom. You can leverage sophisticated technology tools affordably via the cloud, which allows you to compete with the big guys. But perhaps one of the biggest changes is how businesses today finance their growth. Not too long ago, if you needed startup capital or growth capital, you had to write a business plan and you had to go knocking on doors with your best Sunday suit on. And as a result, many dreams and ideas never saw the light of day because the founders simply couldn't access the capital they needed. Then the inner stage left, the era of crowdfunding. And suddenly anyone with an idea or a concept could reach out to thousands of people to ask for funds. I call it the democratization of lending. And joining me today is Cliff Enico, whose name many of you may recognize. He's considered to be one of America's leading experts on legal and tax problems facing entrepreneurs and small business owners. He's a prolific writer. He's written 16 books on legal and tax issues, including the Crowdfunding Handbook. Welcome, Cliff. It's so great to be back on the airwaves with you, so to speak.
Susan, it is always a pleasure. Looking fabulous as always.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. For those of you who don't know, many years ago, Cliff and I had a radio show together. So it's fun to be back with you, Cliff. Always great.
No, people always tell me I have the face for radio.
Oh, cute.
So
yeah, but we're getting you on video today too. So there you go. So, I'm curious. I mentioned crowdfunding. And I think generally most people sort of have a concept of what crowdfunding is. It's been around now for a number of years. But can you actually raise money for your company that way, or is it just a lot of hoopla?
Well, I'll tell you, crowdfunding's been around for a while. It's been around in one form or another for 15 years or so. That's when Kickstarter.com got started. But up until very, very recently, Susan, you couldn't use it to raise money for a company or a business. You could raise money for a project of some kind. So let's say, for example, I want to write a new book and I want to take 6 months off to write the manuscript, and I don't want my wife to kill me. I could basically go online and say, hey, I'm writing this new book. I'm a world famous small business author. For $100 you get an autographed copy of the book. For $1,000 investment, I'll invite you to the launch party at my publishers in New York. For $10,000, I'll come over to your house and I'll watch your kid. I mean, that's kind of what we used to call it project crowdfunding. In fact, a lot of fun. A lot of couples who had trouble conceiving a child used to use crowdfunding for their in vitro fertilization, because that's not usually covered by insurance. I remember one crowdfunding a few years ago where the couple actually, as an incentive, gave the crowd a chance to name the baby. If they ever had a baby, they had a list of boys' names and girls' names, and the crowd could pick the name of the. Can you imagine that?
No, I don't know. I don't know how I'd feel about that if I had a kid and then somebody came up with some crazy name.
There's an old Chinese saying, success has 1,000 fathers, but this takes it to a whole new level, I think. But that was crowdfunding up until about a year ago. And then last year, Congress and the SEC changed some rules, which basically allow companies now to use these crowdfunding portals to raise cash from total strangers for their companies, just like you could with venture capital. And it is a revolution. It's probably the biggest change we've seen in those laws in about, I'd say, 80, 90 years.
So when I said it was the democratization of funding, I mean, with that regulation, to the best of my understanding, Cliff, people that would fall into the category of like non-accredited investors, so they didn't have over $1 million in wealth or whatever, they can actually own equity in a company. Is that correct?
That's absolutely right. In the bad old days, if you wanted to raise money without going through the SEC public offering process, you had to actually know the people you were talking to. And they had to be very sophisticated, rich, people who didn't need the protection of the securities law. The securities laws, Susan, basically are consumer protection laws. These are laws designed to prevent Ma and Pa Klittlehofer from nowhere, New York, from losing their life savings to an unscrupulous stock promoter like me, some evil lawyer lawyer who's going to take advantage of them and stuff like that. And the SEC recognized quite early on, certain people do not need that protection. If you are the chairman of Goldman Sachs, you don't need the protection of the securities laws. So up until now, you had to make sure that all your investors were what we call accredited investors. Under crowdfunding, you can offer to the world at large. Now, there are limits. These people can only invest a certain percentage of their income in these crowdfunded offerings every year. I mean, the SEC still doesn't want these poor people going bankrupt, but it's a lot easier. And the main thing here for most small businesses is, for the first time, you can raise money from your social media followers. This is going to be a big deal. Let's say that I have a popular restaurant in Horseheads, New York. It's the most popular place. It's been around for 100 years. I'm the third generation owner. I'm very well known. Bottom line is, I'm a service business. Service businesses are not going to get venture capital in this real world. If I want money, I got to go borrow money from a bank at 1,000,000% interest, or my credit cards. Under crowdfunding, if I have a popular restaurant and if I have 10,000 likes on Facebook, or 5,000 Twitter followers, or 15,000 posts on Instagram, I can tap all those people who are already fans. They've already bought into my company already to some extent, and hit them up for money. Legally, and make them my investors. I mean, and you may want, if you're a local, prominent person, you may want to say, hey, I own a piece of Cliff's restaurant, Interestingly enough, the very first call that I got after these rules were passed, about a year ago, was from an off-Broadway producer friend of mine who wanted to produce his next off-Broadway show using crowdfunding. A very, very good idea if you think about it. This is how a lot of entertainment projects, documentary films, Broadway shows, off-Broadway shows, this is how a lot of these things are going to be getting funding. And by the way, food and liquor are a major thing in crowdfunding right now. So I
was just going to ask you, what kind of, you mentioned restaurants and things, what kind of businesses can most benefit from crowdfunding?
Okay. Well, basically, the kind of business that will benefit most from crowdfunding, Susan, is one that has a story. So, for example, the restaurant that's been around 100 years that I just gave, or I call them wowie zowie companies. Companies that have a great story to tell, where you go, wow, I would like a piece of that. Let's face it, how many of you out there would like a piece of the Broadway musical Hamilton right now?
Yeah, no kidding.
Seriously, remember the producers, Zero Mostel, and all of that, and Nathan Lane for a younger generation. I mean, that's how those guys would be operating now. But also, too, I think companies that can also promise something tangible. So, for example, during the first month that these new rules went into effect, 28 craft breweries around the country launched offerings. And I said to myself, craft breweries? What's going on with that? Well, I figured, okay, well, they have a strong local following. They're definitely wowies. We all know what beer is. Take a good look at me. I mean, I have had some close encounters with hops in my career. Okay, let's be honest about that. But seriously, but also too, they could do things like, for every $1,000 you get, like a 6-pack or a case, they can actually give a physical product in addition to the intangible investment. And I'm seeing that. So, for example, a lot of small real estate projects. We're doing some low-income housing in our town, and we want everybody to help fund this, as it's a good thing we're doing for homeless people. That kind of stuff, where you can offer them something that people can point to.
Sure.
What's not seeming to be working as well, believe it or not, Susan, are tech companies. You think that the tech companies, all these people that call me, I get calls from all kinds of kids 24/7 that have a new app that they want to launch, because that's what I do. I help launch companies, and 99% of these ideas are just totally off the wall, but they're not doing it as much. And I think the reason that they're not doing it as much is because their lawyers, their accountants, their evil advisors are poisoning their ears by saying, look, if you do this, you are not going to be able to raise real venture capital when the time comes. They're going to look at these 50, 60 people you got running around. Oh, we're not going anywhere near that. That's too scary.
Right. They don't want to be in business with all those people, right? So.
Right. But the breweries, the liquor companies, the entertainment type people. I saw a documentary filmmaker just posted a crowdfunding the other day for, some project he wants to work on. These are the people that are taking advantage of it. And it's a good thing. If you have a strong social media component, if you have a strong presence on social media, your chances of success in an offering, especially if you keep the dollar amounts low, are quite good.
So, let me ask you this, Cliff, because a lot of companies today, in order to remain relevant, they're thinking up innovative things. There's new strategies, really to keep their companies growing and moving forward. What kind of questions should these business leaders be asking themselves before they decide to go after crowdfunding?
Okay, very important. Number one, can we get the money any other way? Because doing a crowdfunding is not for sissies. It's not for the faint of heart. You are going to have to put together a little offering document, although it's not nearly as bad as you used to have to do with the SEC. We're not talking about a 100-page book. You have to put together a disclosure document. You have to register with a crowdfunding portal, and there's about 50 or 60 of these around the country now. Kickstarter's not doing it as yet. They're sitting on the fence. They're not doing it. Indiegogo was also sitting on the fence, but some of the others, there's one called seedinvest.com in New York, has gotten very big into this space. You have to register with a portal. You have to be fairly disciplined when you do one of these. You have to make sure that all communications take place on the portal. One of the little gotcha rules here is, when you launch one of these things, you register, you put your offering up on a portal, and by the way, they let you put up just about anything you want. If you want to put up videos with your CEO, you want to put a demonstration of the product, you can do all kinds of stuff and put it on there. But the big thing is, the big no-no here is that once you do that, you cannot promote the offering any other place. Everything has to happen on the portal. So you can put a little notice on your website saying, hey, we've launched a crowdfunding, we're looking to raise $1 million. Go to the portal here with a link.
So you can't even email somebody back and forth. You got to push them over to the portal.
You can't email. You can't talk on television. I couldn't, if I was doing one of these for my next book, I couldn't say it in this interview.
Wow.
All I could do is saying, we have a crowdfunding for my next book. Here is the link to the portal.
Right.
And people, everything, all the communication, they want to make sure that all the investors that are looking at these things have the same information at the same time, and that nobody's getting any special information or under the table information like insider trading. They don't want that.
This sounds pretty complex, and I know you're a lawyer, and business for lawyers is good, but as a business leader, do you have to have a lawyer to give you legal advice to navigate all of this?
They say no. And if you're very disciplined, and especially if you've dealt with this process before, if you've done like a friends and family offering, you probably can get away with it. But I feel you're better off just to have an attorney there sitting by your side while you fill out the form. It's actually a question and answer form. It's not like a physical piece of paper document. You go on the portal, and then they give you the SECs. There's 42 questions which you have to answer, and there are certain answers that will be better at getting you money. And that's what the attorneys and the accountants, doesn't have to be an attorney, it could be an accountant or a financial advisor, somebody just to sit there and say, oh, wait a minute, what they're looking for is X, how close to that can you say without committing fraud? That's what you need, because I have seen some crowdfundings where they put some real howlers, stuff that contradicts each other. They use different numbers.
I was going to say maybe a lot of pie in the sky kind of estimates on their projections, right?
Yeah, hockey stick growth potential. We're going to raise $5 billion and make $5 billion in 1 year. Don't get me wrong. I love entrepreneurs. They're crazy as hell, and I love them. I love them to death. I always have. But on this format, you got to be very careful about this. You can't, all the SEC fraud rules still apply, so you got to be very careful. So the trick is, first thing you got to think about is, how much money do I want to raise, and be conservative. Crowdfunding right now is a great way to raise like $100,000, $200,000. They allow you to raise up to $1 million over a 12-month period, but I would be conservative there. If you're just doing a little startup, if you're a restaurant, only go for what you really feel you need and that you can't raise from other sources.
Cliff, you mentioned there are a lot of portals. I mean, I can remember you mentioned Indiegogo and Kickstarter. I mean, those were the original two only games in town. So now with these other portals available, how do you select the one that's right for your company? I'm sure it's got to be a good fit.
It has to be a good fit, Susan. This is the key. Pick the right portal, and you probably will have a successful crowdfunded offering. Now, there will come a time down the road where these portals have lots and lots of investors already registered with them. So 10 years from now, if you ask me that question, my answer is going to be pick the portal that has the most investors. But we're not there yet. Right now, this is still in its infancy, and frankly, a lot of these portals, and this is a dirty little secret, but a pretty obvious one. A lot of these these portals are looking for you, the
Right.
company, to help them, generate
Sure.
investors. It's kind of, one hand washes the other here. They're going to be looking for you to help them find investors that they can then sell other offerings to. So my philosophy right now is look for the one that understands your company. So, for example, if you are a craft brewery, look for a crowdfunding portal that has done craft breweries before. They exist.
Right.
That gets your industry, that understands what's going on. Where somebody like me who just likes beer and wants to look for this, I'm more likely to go to this portal than that one because they have all the best breweries on this one.
Right. Yeah, I was going to say, bankers are the same way. Back when we used to go to the banks, there were some banks who had no interest in doing real estate deals and other ones
Right.
who loved them. So, you got to find the right appetite there.
Speaking of real estate, by the way, there are portals that specialize in real estate. The top one right now is one called ifunding.co. Co, not com.
Okay.
The letter I, funding.co. They're very big in real estate. Crowdfunding has transformed the way we do real estate offerings these days. It's had a major impact on that. There's also portals that specialize in franchises. If you have a small restaurant chain and you're looking for money to franchise it, to pay the $50,000 to the $100,000 that you got to do to register with the FTC and all that, there's a portal for that. I actually was I gave a talk to the Oklahoma Bar Association last year. I was traveling the country. I did almost the entire country last year, the Bar Association circuit, doing this talk on crowdfunding. And there was a young man I met during one of the breaks who was from one of the Native American tribes in Oklahoma, and he wanted to set up a portal. He was actually registering a portal for businesses that came out of that Native American tribe.
I'll be darned, that's specialized, yeah.
So that's how specialized this can get.
What about this? Let's say I have a business and I put it out there and I want to raise $1 million, but I only raise $250,000. What happens?
Okay. Well, that can happen. And when you set your offering up, I always tell my clients, be sure you set it up as what's called a minimum maximum. So we're looking to raise at least $100,000 and a maximum of $500,000. Give yourself a range. So, because if you don't, let's say, for example, that you go out to offer $500,000 and you only raise $250,000. Well, $250,000, you can do a lot with that money, right?
Yeah, but it may not be enough to get you where you needed to go if you're really,
right. Exactly. And the way the rules work, you have to give the money back.
Oh, okay.
If you don't raise your target amount, you have to give it back. That's why I say do what they call a min-max. We're going to raise 100 to 5,000. So that way, if you do get over 100,000, you can glom that money and take those investors and still keep the offering open for the remaining, 300 to 400,000, whatever is left.
So you talked about the SEC rules to protect the consumer, the investor, right? So I'm curious. I know you and I both know, like when it comes to inventors, there are a lot of companies out there that are really just scams. They take your money and they run. Are there businesses now popping up that say, "Oh, I can help you get the crowdfunding you need. Write a check for 10 grand or 20 grand, and we're going to go and blow this thing out of the water." Yeah. What do we watch out for?
Are you talking about me, Susan?
Never, Cliff. Never.
No. The answer is there's going to be a lot of this, and for one reason, under the SEC rules, the portals are not allowed to help you in any way. They can certainly answer your questions about how the portal works and whatnot, but they're not going to say, "Oh, you know what? You really didn't do that disclosure right. Do it this way." They're not going to put their finger on the scales and help you, because the SEC will punish them greatly if they don't. Portals have immense liability under this. If there is an error or a misstatement in a crowdfunded filing, they are liable with you. They suffer just as well as, even though it was your mistake, even though there was no way they could tell that your disclosures were inaccurate, that you made up that press release. So they are going to be on the hook for this. So there are going to be people out there, not so much working for you, but working for the portals, to say to the portals, "Look, I'll make sure that offering is right. I'll make sure when that thing comes in, you don't have to worry about your malpractice policy or your errors and omissions policy. This one's going to be okay."
Right.
And there is a possibility that some lawyers and accountants who do a lot of work in this space might offer themselves to the portals, saying, "Look, we can help you minimize this liability. We'll vet these offerings, or we'll vet the investors, accountants." I actually have a CPA friend of mine that is holding himself out, and he's a very honorable guy, to vet the tax returns of the investors, because they have to be. If someone says that they're an accredited investor, but the numbers look different, it's fraud.
Yeah.
So, there's liability going both ways. The portals are liable to make sure that the investors are who they say they are. And there are accountants who are getting into the game saying, hey, we'll look at these numbers. We'll tell you if we think there's any funny business going on.
Pretty complicated stuff, really. So, Cliff, let me ask you, in any industry, we see things that come and go, right? So is this going to be this crowdfunding? Is this going to be a permanent fixture on the horizon, or is this going to be a flash in the pan?
Okay. The answer is it's too soon to know. This is brand new. I mean, these things, we're just coming up on the 1-year anniversary of these rules. I don't want to give specific dates.
Which I might add took forever to get passed, right?
It took over 3 years it took for this
right,
to get
exactly. That's government for you.
They were very worried about this,
right.
And rightfully so. And I'll tell you why, too. They weren't wrong either to be upset about this. The thing is that this is revolutionary. This is very new. We're going through sort of how can I say it? There's going to be sort of a getting to know you period. There are probably going to be some lawsuits. I'm not aware of any as yet, where somebody alleges that they bought us a crowdfunded stock and it was fraud or something like that. We haven't had that happen yet because it's so new, but that's probably going to happen for the next couple of years. But my prediction is longer term, this is how your children and grandchildren will be funding their startup companies. Why? Because if there's one thing, I mean, forgive me, I hate to generalize about a generation at all. That gets silly. So many people do it and they don't do it well. Right. But if there's one thing you can say about the millennial generation and the younger generations that are coming up behind them, they hate Wall Street. They hate banks. They saw a lot of their relatives lose their jobs, during the financial meltdown in 2008, and they just do not like the existing system. They want to live in a world where people can do business directly, peer-to-peer. The whole peer-to-peer lending thing, right. Prosper.com is coming out of this, the microfunding, and crowdfunding, I think, is going to be a part of that as well. As these generations get into positions of power and become the political majority in this country and the economic majority, I think they're going to be more inclined to look to these more favorably than, forgive me, us, shall we say, more seasoned participants, who are a little bit leery about this. Well, this is crazy. You just put something up on a portal and you can raise $1 million. That's
right.
Ridiculous.
And you don't have to put your Sunday suit on to go meet with the banker, right?
Well, I'll tell you, for some companies, you're better off not to.
That's exactly right.
Show me a millennial tech entrepreneur in a suit, and I will show you a company I am not going to invest in because somebody's putting him up to that.
That's right. That's right. There's something wrong there. Right.
Is this at a craft brewery, especially? I want to see a craft brewery guy who looks like a craft brewery guy. Right. If he doesn't have the waist-high gum boots, I don't buy it. Yeah. And by the way, you can do a lot of that. You can do a little theater with crowdfunding, which you could never do with an offering before, as long as you stay accurate. Yeah. By the way, how much is all this going to cost, by the way? It's a question that people ask me all the time.
Yeah.
The bigger crowdfunding portals usually charge 10 to 15% of the offering amount. They charge a lot, understandably, because they're taking on all this live.
It's a lot of risk, yeah.
But for smaller offerings, there are portals. If you're only looking to raise 100 or 150 or 200,000, you're not going near the $1 million mark, anywhere near. There are portals that will do it for a flat fee. Like lawyers will often give you a flat fee for something. If it's just a little 1-hour project, they'll do it for a flat fee. They won't go by the hour. The portals are doing the same thing as well. And that's a question you want to ask if you're raising small amounts of money, like a microfunding from these people. Ask that question. Because let's face it, the portals are competing.
Right.
They're all looking to be acquired down the road. If I was running a portal, my holy of holies would be to be acquired by a Kickstarter or an Indiegogo. I want to be their SEC crowdfunding portal. So I want to build my portfolio too. I want to get 1,000 issuers under contract within a year. I want to have 10,000, 15,000 investors. So I'm going to work with you. I'm going to play with you a little bit. So don't be afraid. Like anything else, don't be afraid to negotiate. Right? You don't ask, you don't get.
That's right. Absolutely, Cliff. This is really interesting. I mean, I felt like I knew quite a bit about crowdfunding, but you've certainly opened my eyes to a lot of things, and I'm sure to a lot of our listeners. So I thank you for being here. Thanks for the information. And also tell us if we want to get a copy of the book or we want to follow you in social media, where can we find you?
The book is available on Amazon and any place that books are sold. It's called The Crowdfunding Handbook. If you're looking for me, the best website is www.succeedinginyourbusiness.com.
Great.
It's a little bit on the long side, but succeedinginyourbusiness.com. That's the best place to get a hold of me. I got articles up there.
Yeah.
I also have a YouTube channel. If you search for Cliff Enico on YouTube, you'll find me. I actually have a video, believe it or not, on how to sell.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
A lawyer teaching you how to sell. I mean, is this the new world? Is this the new world, or is it?
You're a rainmaker, Cliff. What can I say? So, and actually, we also publish your syndicated column on our website, SusanSolovic.com, and we always have links to your site and everything on there too. So, and of course, with this podcast, we'll have links where you can get in touch with Cliff. So, thanks again, Cliff. Thanks for being here.
Always a pleasure, Susan. Thank you.
And thanks to all of you for listening to the 1% Edge podcast. You know, we produce a new program every week, so I hope you'll become a loyal fan of ours. Our goal is to really bring you the best of the best so that you can create the best in your business. And we want you to create that competitive edge, that critical 1% edge, so you can soar to success in your small, growing organization. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for listening to the 1% Edge. If you found these insights and tips helpful, be sure to hit the subscribe button on your podcast player and leave a review in iTunes to help others discover the 1% Edge.